Now, what I'd like to do now is the finale, basically, of the conference. We have a panel discussion. So as we've had all these presentations, which is wonderful, but we've brought in some amazing individuals that are doing excellent things on their own right and have a lot of wisdom to share as well. So the panel discussion is going to be led by Tanys Coughlan, one of our own, and on the panel we'll have Sheila Seppi, Alan Steinfeld, and also Adam Apollo, which is being brought in as a panelist, and the fantastic Eesha Patel is also going to be with us in the panel. So I'm leaving it to you, Tanys, to lead and host our wonderful panelists. And thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. So if we can have our panelists join us, that's awesome. Thank you so much. How's everyone doing tonight?
Great.
Great.
Awesome conference.
Awesome. Great to see you.
So landing in a new place today. So
pardon me, sorry?
I said, yeah, I'm fantastic. Just landing in a new home.
All right.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lots of moving.
Exactly.
That discombobulated. Gotcha. Awesome. Maybe what we'll do is, why don't you guys each introduce yourself with like one or two sentences. What do you do? What do you see yourself as? Eesha?
I am a galactic ambassador, and I help humans connect with the off-world beings in a very structured, easy to understand kind of format.
Awesome. Adam?
I made contact with a physical galactic being back in 2005 and met the Galactic Council and remembered that I came here from the Sirian star system and have been educating on this planet ever since. I'm also a tech CEO and a unified physicist. So I straddle a lot of the line between these sort of multi-dimensional metaphysical explorations with the grounded foundational physics that we need to better understand how we're becoming a galactic species.
Thank you. And Sheila.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Sheila Seppi. I am a walk-in from a multidimensional collective. I work with a variety of different beings in healing modalities, channeling one Andromedan Tiamu, and I'm just here to be a way shower in however I can.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We seem to have lost Alan. I think a technical issue, perhaps. So we'll go ahead and give it a shot. We'll get started. So I have a bunch of questions here that I'd love to share. Since there's only 3, what I'd like to do is have you pick the questions that you'd like to respond to.
Actually, I am here. Can I just do a introduction?
There he is.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Hi.
Thank you. Yeah, I lost you on my phone. I'm on my computer. It's good to see my old friends here. I feel like I live with them, Sheila and Adam, Eesha. There's such a common bond in this work, and everyone's covering a different piece of it. Scott did a beautiful piece. Everybody on today. So I see us working as an organism for a better future, a higher dimension, and where everyone's kind of filling in their own piece here and complementing each other, because we all have the same vision of, and I wrote this book, Making Contact, but it's not just making contact, but it's living in the new reality. People I know here, they're actually living there. So maybe a lot of things wouldn't make sense to someone outside our group, but we're trying to make this bridge to not the common person, but the person that has not been allowed to activate their greater potential. And that's the most exciting part. We're missionaries for a new mission here. We're awakeners that are trying to wake up ourselves to know what it really is to be a galactic citizen, to be a part of the cosmos. And that for me is the most exciting work and play that I think anyone can be involved in. So I'm happy to see my good friends and new friends. So thank you, Tanya.
Well, welcome. Glad you were able to come back on. So we have a bunch of questions. I think it would be good to start off with one like, what do you think would need to happen for humanity to be really ready for ETs? What kind of steps do you think we need to take? And we hear a lot about raising your vibration. What are some of the very practical steps we need to take?
Why don't you call on people?
Okay. Then let's start with Adam, please.
Sure, that sounds great. Really, really good question. In my perspective, the sort of critical mass of humanity being ready, in the sense that if a widespread extraterrestrial presence showed up, came down, started engaging, started in landing, just with pods at first, then extending to the masses, I think honestly, we've been ready for something that great of a change since 2005. However, it's not really just about the masses. It's about the fact that we have right now certain military industrial complexes that are obsessed with controlling this planet. And the reality is that our galactic family is here to ensure we don't destroy ourselves, but there is a transition phase that we're in where the people, the ambassadors, those who are choosing to represent humanity and to pave the way for a peaceful and regenerative future for us all, must actually rise into that planetary stewardship. If we're simply saved by some off-world species, then we are put in a position where they become our angels, our gods, and those that would be worshipped by many humans. And as you know, humanity doesn't really get down with that. We end up rebelling against our gods. We end up revolting and creating a lot of problems. And we've seen that already happen on this planet on multiple occasions before first contact protocols actually existed here. And so there is a major need for us to rise on our own and actually step forward in stewardship of our own planet, to join this galactic community on equal footing as a species in balance and harmony with the rest of this galactic council.
Thank you. Eesha, what are your thoughts on that?
I would echo very much what Adam has said, and also just adding in the piece of information that I received from Star Family, which is it's really heavily emphasizing at the moment the element of choice that we have to choose whichever outcome that we want. So again, it's not about them coming in and saving us, but really it's about if we as a human race want to evolve and we want their assistance, which we don't have to have, but if we wanted that, we could reach out and ask for that. And so, you know, a lot of people, they ask when I'm doing my interviews and stuff, oh, well, you know, if all these starships are out there in the atmosphere, why don't they just land? Well, that's the reason. And also because actually Vivian Chauvet and I had a great chat about this the other day on my podcast. And she was sharing from the Arcturian perspective that if they sense that fear, even if you say, yes, I'm ready, I want this, if they sense that fear in your core, they'll still respect that, because there's that human sovereignty and that piece around our journey that they're very mindful of as well.
Definitely. And Sheila?
Yeah, I agree with both Adam and Eesha. And also the fact that we as individuals have to make that choice for ourselves. We have to decide. I believe that we as a human species are on a particular timeline, but we have to decide where we're going to show up in that timeline. We have to decide if we're going to anchor ourselves, if we're going to drop into fear. We're going to have to decide how it is that we want to raise our vibration. And when the collective consciousness, I believe, reaches a certain vibrational frequency that we're able to match our star families, then they're going to come down and show up in whatever way that they show up.
Alan?
Right. Can you just repeat the question for a second?
Absolutely. What do you think we would need, or what would need to happen for humanity to be really ready for contact with ETs? Are there steps we can take now to get ready? We hear a lot about raising your vibration. What are some very practical steps?
Well, yes, it is what Sheila said, because Sheila has raised her vibration. She and everyone here is, but humans are very strange people, or strange beings. They're like, we look at this election coming up. I'm not going to get political, but everyone believes they have the answer, or they know what's right, or their person or their baseball team or whatever is the right thing. And we get attached to these exterior labels and identify with them as if they're us. And I think whatever's out there is helping us transcend these very limited ways of identification. You think you're your history or your family or your lineage or your thoughts, and these cover up the I am presence that we are, which is eternal. So I think first understanding our eternal nature, because that's where we're going to meet these beings on an even playing field, right? Like Adam said, we're not going to worship them. They're not going to save us. The only thing we need to save ourselves from ourselves. So we have to understand who we are as eternal, immortal, forever beings, because that's the level of consciousness that's coming here to help wake us up for who we are. But we have to be a little bit awake to even recognize that something's coming. So it's a matter of shifting our thought processes. It really is. To meet these beings, we have to get over the limitation that has kept humanity in a box of enslavement, and by others and by ourselves. And we need to think new thoughts and understand new realities, in a sense where we need to perceive other levels of awareness. Perception is the key. So we need to understand what perception is and see, a fish does not see it's in water. Well, we're in water, or whatever you want to call it. And when we lift our heads out of it, we do see these bigger realities. And that's when these other beings can meet us on an even playing field.
Mm.
I have a lot more to say, but that's it.
Yeah, I would love to just add a little bit of a cherry on top of that, Alan, because when you say, it's about perception, you're absolutely right. And one of the most important things about perception in relationship to this second question, which is how do we raise our vibration enough to be a part of the galactic community? I actually look at it differently than that. I would say that from a perception standpoint, it's not about raising your vibration. It's actually about bandwidth and integration, meaning we have to be just as accepting of everything that's low vibration as much as everything that's high vibration. And I like to use the metaphor of music because everybody can relate to the idea that you don't really ever like listening to music that's just high piercing sounds. You want music that's got bass, it's got mids, it's got highs. And life is a journey like that, full of bass notes and mid notes and high notes. And when we start kind of repressing or rejecting the low frequency stuff to try to always stay positive and in a high frequency, what happens is we end up crashing. And so the practice of, I believe, really integrating in a way that the galactic community does, it means taking everything for what it is, embracing the most dark shadows of our own species and humanity so that we can reconcile them, so that we can alchemize that pain and turn it into beauty and grace.
I agree with that, Adam, but I think we've also, the other side of that is that we've already so indulged in low frequency, lifetime after lifetime. We've all suffered, and I think something else is possible. Without denying what you're saying, we need to embrace it, own it, and realize that maybe we don't have to repeat that.
I would love to add to this.
I agree.
Because I've been
Me
diving
too.
into the mathematical aspect of this, which Adam, I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Mm,
You know, really put simply, when you take mathematics and dimensions to go from the one dimension to the two dimension. So the 0 dimension is a dot, the 1 dimension is a line, the second dimension is a square, and then you make that into a cube in the 3D. But you try and make me a cube without any lines or squares, it's impossible. But at the same time, the line dissolves within what is actually the new formation. So I think there's truth in what both of you are saying, in that we're going to dissolve the lower vibrations, that square is no longer going to be there, but it's now part of the new formation. And I think that's where we need to start placing our vision, is what is that new creation, without ditching, without bypassing, but how do we include it and also build something else with that?
Right. And realizing with all of these things that we have these octaves of vibration still within a singularity of a frequency. So we can embrace the entirety of a frequency and all of those octaves. And as we learn and as humanity heals and as we're able to embrace those shadow aspects, we still begin to move up within these frequency bands. And so I think that everything that we've all said really adds to the richness of these questions that you're asking.
Yeah, I just want to say you're right, Adam. In some ways, a lot of people I'm thinking about are spiritual bypassers. No, they don't want to go there, and that's we need to embrace the pain, suffering, and hard times we've all had, and also see something else. But there's an epidemic of that other stuff, and so
yeah,
it's
I'm in full agreement with all of you, actually. So I appreciate you speaking to what I shared in a way that further unpacks this for people, because it is important that we understand what we mean when we say we want to sustain at a higher vibrational octave, for example. And what that means is a baseline of our lives actually is in a more full and rich and beautiful realm of experience, where we don't have to be creating more and more karmas and suffering more and more. So and yet, if you want to experience that, you do need to face and integrate whatever pains, whatever traumas you haven't yet. And when I look at most of humanity, we've got a little bit of work to do, and it's okay. It's ceremonial, it's alchemical, it's part of this journey of transmutation into becoming a galactic species.
Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So, what ethical issues should we consider when meeting beings from other worlds, especially if they see things very differently from us?
Well, how do you define ethics, and in terms of you're talking about in terms of correct behavior? I mean, that has such a vast level of meaning. Obviously, there's no ethics on some species that come in, abduct people, take their genetics. But if you talk to Bashar, he says, well, you agreed to that. So he's coming from a place where it's like, oh, yeah, you've already agreed. That's the ethics we're going by. And some people are saying, no, I've changed my mind. I don't want that. So, you know, maybe they're doing it for a good reason, but maybe they're not ethical based on our limited understanding of ethics, and they think they're helping humanity or their race. So it's a confusing question for me. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that one and just say that, you know, I agree with Bashar on multiple levels. One is that you as a soul are choosing your experience. So you decide when your sovereignty is given away and when it's not. Now, that's, you know, as a frame, a very difficult frame for someone who's gone through a lot of trauma. And I've gone through trauma in my life, and I had to both learn how to integrate and heal that trauma, as well as develop the capacity to move from the victim state to the owning of the reality that I created that for my life's journey to be who I am now. Now, on the other side, in terms of ethics of extraterrestrials themselves, I've met many, you know, people with different kinds of encounters, and ones abducted by grays, for example, which is what you're pointing to very specifically. Stan Romanek great example, right? Stan's written all these books about the Greys, and they came, and he always talks about it like it's really spooky, and they came to his house and they abducted him, and all these things happen. But after I listened to Stan, I could see inside his soul stream, he was Grey. He was a Zeta Reticuli. And I went over and afterwards, and I was like, so do you ever reveal to people that you're actually from there and that's who you are? And he's like, how did you know? Like, don't let people, like he was keeping it quiet for himself in his journey of rising in his fame as this sort of abductee and contactee. But as you evolve, you start to realize that oftentimes you have contracts with these species and or these beings that you've come from these worlds. And when I look at the situation of the Zeta Reticuli as a whole on this planet, what I mostly see is a species recovering from a galactic war a very long time ago, in which being able to experiment with and relate with their own souls who have incarnated as humans as a massive healing process to that ancient trauma. That's actually how it all rolls out. And then you end up with also 80 to 90% of the information that's released, especially from whistleblowers and et cetera, just as Stephen Greer says, 80 to 90% of that stuff is disinformation. And it's designed to drive us towards a desire for space-based weapons, which was Werner von Braun's last statements on his deathbed, that they would use extraterrestrial threat as a mechanism to build weapon systems. And I can say for sure in my own experience that the galactic community is got ethics out the wazoo, like the highest level of conscious awareness and connection and desire for every people, every culture to have its sovereignty and its beauty and have an opportunity to exchange and meet each other. And as far as on Earth, my last thing I'll say is just, I think principles like open source within the technology community is a really beautiful example of an ethical approach to IP and knowledge and how we create things that's very in line with the galactic species out there. When you give away your greatest insights, nobody has to fight over those technologies anymore. You're making sure everybody's staying caught up with each other. And we definitely are seeing the greatest movements around that in, for example, AI right now, that the open source work in that space is decentralizing its power and giving its power to everyone, no matter what level of device you have. And that's really important for us as we go forward, is to equalize and balance our distribution of power on this planet.
Right.
Yeah, I am in agreement with both of you. And only thing I want to add is, it's very different when we make contracts on a soul level versus dropping into the human experience and going through those contracts. Because the reality of it is, as a human, most of us would not agree to a lot of the things that we have agreed to experience on the other side because we have a much higher perspective.
Yeah. Well, I just want to bring up one point is I didn't mind my contact abduction, whatever you want to call it, I think evolved me to see a bigger picture. But when I was interviewing someone like Marina, you remember Marina Sarin? She was saying, look, these beings are taking me, and in my present conscious mind, I don't want that. I may have made an agreement in the past, but I'm calling it off right now. And they didn't stop because they say she made this agreement. So there is that ethical charge. If you decide, if you're going on a date with someone and then decide, no, forget, it's like, but you said you were going, it's like, we need to have the exercise of free will. And some of these gray beings don't seem to take that ethical exchange into account. And that's a problem for the human, which you're right, Sheila, the human wouldn't want it, but we can stand up for what we want now. So I don't know the right answer. It is confusing, but What do you
I
think?
think the way that I perceive from the galactic perspective is instead of relying on external governance systems like a rule book to tell you what to do, I think when you're more connected to source and more connected into that unified field, you're going to naturally make decisions that are going to be beneficial for the greater collective. Like, right now we have, well, even dating back thousands of years ago when we had the 10 Commandments come through, well, that was because humanity was at a state where they weren't able to feel their own ethical stance on certain things. And things would have been considered okay unless something from the outside came and said, well, actually, you shouldn't lie, you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't harm each other. But it's like humans were not evolved enough that they had to be told that. And I think when you do evolve to a higher level of consciousness within yourself, it becomes almost like a natural state of ethics that's in alignment with the divine will and the source will, that you would not be able to harm. It's almost impossible in that fifth dimensional or higher consciousness to harm another being, because the second you did, you would feel that pain internally. You would feel like you're slapping your own arm or you're hurting your own self. And so I think we've got a way to go to get to that level of evolution, but I think the galactic races, many of them have got that piece. And so a lot of the suffering that we experience right now on this planet is not experienced in those races because their ethical capabilities are coming from an internal sense of what genuinely feels right, not just for themselves, but for the greater good as well.
I think though we came from source, from the golden age, whatever you want to call it, and we knew those values. We incarnated originally with that high integrity, and maybe as we've forgotten and sunk deeper into the human experience, we did devolve, unevolve, devolve, and now we're circling back up to those higher standards. So it's this big cycle we're returning to, and it doesn't feel good to do all those things, to steal, to lie. I mean, to even tell like a white lie, a false. It's like I feel that. It's like I think we're getting more sensitive and returning to the source from where we came. So it's an evolution
Yeah.
cycle.
I would so
And
agree with that. Yeah, I
yeah.
feel deeply like if I do something that even if no one else notices, the amount of guilt that I feel sometimes for doing something that I know is inherently wrong with my moral system, I feel that, and I'll feel that for days sometimes, and I have to sit and like really clear that. But then I see other people do the same thing, like they'll lie to their mother about dinner or whatever, and I'll go, how can you do that? Like I would rather be honest about something and then face the consequences of that than to just even tell a white lie or a bigger lie and just continue on like nothing happened. So I think some of us are starting to feel at that vibrational level the incongruences with the actions and the decisions that we're making
Yeah.
at times.
Adam.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I used Stan, Romanek as an example, and I mean, I think his entire life imploded. The guy's convicted of all kinds of stuff, and it's kind of horrible. But it's a really clear example of like if you're lying to people and lying to yourself in whatever ways, or trying to present yourself as something that you're not to people, you're going to carry that weight and it's going to act like a rubber band, and it's going to get more and more intense until finally that time stream, as you might call it, where you're trying to branch a false reality off your own timeline, it's going to collapse back in because it has to. You're not that false thing. And this is very true of looking at past traumas and people's experience, where they've created a new story in their head about what happened, but that new story never actually meets who they are right now. So it's the acknowledgement and acceptance of what's actually happened in their lives that's the first and most powerful step of the healing, because they actually begin to embrace their real, true journey, no matter how, lively or painful it might have been. And so we need to get honest as a species about our past as well.
Yeah.
I agree with Adam. I know when I came in as a walk-in, I had these implanted memories of like, oh, everything was, great. Yes, I was sick, but I had this great childhood. But I kept saying, I want more memories. Give me some more memories. Well, they did. And it was like, no, I don't want those memories. Give me some better memories. Give me some better memories. And I think that as a species, that's what we kind of do. You know, we're like, oh, I want more. I want more. And we start to get that more. And then it's like, but wait a minute. That's not the more I wanted. I want it over here. I want to move through life seamlessly without having to go through the pain of really acknowledging who we are as a human, who we are as a soul, and reconciling the two of them.
Yeah, that's great, Sheila. You're right to remind us that part of being human is to go through those difficult parts and own it and own that experience. And then we evolve from that. I do want to say one thing, that I don't know if these ETs, whoever they are ethical in the same way we are. We talk about the prime directive or the non-interference, and there's been tremendous amounts of interference by ET. I don't think that really exists. I mean, of course, maybe some are saying just let them watch them evolve, but others have been here manipulating genetics, doing all sorts of things that, ethical or not, whatever, here we are, we're about to take a leap. So, you know, I don't
I
know.
would say they're all evolving, right? I mean, even within the spectrum of galactic races, you've got the ones who are more in that unified field consciousness, and then the ones that aren't. And I think the ones that are responsible for the abductions are probably very similar level of consciousness to us. I mean, you know, we still have on our planet things like war, murder, rape, you know, all these things. I think the races that would choose to do those abductions or take DNA without consent would have to be at a similar level of consciousness. I can only imagine, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
and like I said before, you know, the Zetas in their case, you know, being part of a galactic war where they had a technological gift given to them to install chips in the back of their heads to enable them to access a hive mind and be able to fight together in this galactic war. And we're used as a militarized army to fight against the hybrids, the dragon humanoid hybrids that we call reptilians or draconians. And because they were rolling across the galaxy with robot armies and massive fleets, essentially taking out planets. And the galactic community around these different planets did not know what to do about that. They did not have the warriors and the martial artists and the Jedi to face that. And so this recruitment was, you know, done, I think, by a soul that was probably one of these ancient dragon lords who got pulled away from Andromeda to this galaxy, incarnated unconsciously, and had all of this rage about having their genetics stolen and DNA stolen. This is a lot of the content of my book, The Dragon Key, which is available at thedragonkey.com, and the Amazon version will be ready shortly. I'm releasing it this month. And you know, the healing process that it takes for a species to go through something like that is massive. And then it's also important to recognize that just like humanity, there is no black and white about any species or race in the galaxy. There are beings of many different levels of consciousness among every species and among every race. All that being said, there is very clearly a galactic community that is for the most part, helping to regulate the development of planets across this galaxy. And you can see very clearly their influence because our beautiful, wealthy, luscious planet has not been raided and taken by some advanced species with great technologies. And the fact that that's true already right there tells you a lot about the ethics level at a baseline of the species that are visiting here, because we are still living on this planet generally freely, having our experience, doing our thing as humans. And if a species truly wanted to take this planet from us with their technology level versus ours, they could do it easily overnight. And I think that's where some of these stories break down. And I hear Corey Good and David Wilcock talking about the Navy having an advanced extraterrestrial group that's like fighting against aliens on some other planets. and protecting the earth. And frankly, it's complete BS. Because I've talked to those species. I've had many contact experiences with them, and they laugh and they're like, no, you guys are quarantined to your own solar system. You're not even allowed to be on your own solar system right now. Like, yeah, you built reproduction tech, but you're not going anywhere because you guys are still rolling out onto the galaxy as a militarized force. And we're not going to allow that to come and disturb our beautiful, generally peaceful, complete, utopia-like planets where we can use replicators to render any kind of physical material we need, because we don't need your gold. Sorry, we just realign some molecules in the fabric of space and we have it. So there's a lot of interesting misunderstandings out there. And I think it's important for us to delve deeper into these concepts together to better understand our relationships here.
You're right, Adam. I totally agree with you about Corey and Wilcox, is that people like to fabricate and project the human side of things onto other beings, and they're not really like us. We have a chance to move out of the quarantine, but we have to grow up. We have to get it together. We have to, it's like I used to say in my lectures, your mother wouldn't let you have visitors if you didn't clean up your room. We have to clean up our room if we're really going to get open contact and the technologies that will free us from being enslaved to technologies, energies, whatever the systems are. We can be in control, but we have to get our act together. We really do.
Didn't they come out and say that was all fake anyway? I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I'm pretty sure that whole thing was just like fabricated. So
I'm sure it was.
They did. But is that true? I don't know that. I would be
like a
curious.
couple of years ago, there was like a whole legal case and stuff. I don't know all the details of it, but I just know, like when I watched those videos many years ago on, like when I first signed up to Gaia TV, that was like one of the first series I signed up to watch, and just inside of me, it just didn't feel right, So I just turned it off. I think I watched the first season and was like, nah, don't resonate with this. My galactic family are telling me something completely different. So I think, if anything, it raises the important topic of discernment, even in information and even in sources that we think are trustworthy. Because when something is on a big platform like Gaia TV, you would assume it's been vetted. You would assume that there's been a level of discernment around placing it there in the first place. But we always have to go back to our hearts and really feel what the truth is from within. And for me, it just didn't resonate. And so I just turned it off and never went back. So yeah, apparently it did come out as completely bollocks. So yeah, that's where that's at.
Yeah, well, I met Corey Good at Contact in the Desert some years ago, and I was excited to meet him actually and to talk to him and find out what his experience was like. And he was completely drunk and was like acting like he was ready to assault me and start a fight with me. And I was just, meeting him for the first time, saying hi, like, how's it going? So, we can see that there are people that have significant trauma out there that haven't healed from that. And when they go through very intense traumas, and what I don't doubt that he went through trauma in the military, and the recovery from that is a really difficult process. But we have to use those inner senses, like you're saying, Eesha, where we need to use that inner compass around where is the truth resonating, and where do we feel that like heavy, condensed pressure that's like triggering, because usually that means there's probably some other stuff in there.
Exactly. And they're not really geared to what I feel the higher truth is. I mean, you take someone else like who Sheila's working with, Barbara. She's amazing. Barbara Lamb is such a kind person, and she is on such a beautiful mission to help people reach a higher level in themselves, that you just resonate automatically with someone like that, and Sheila too, who's doing the work to bring in the higher frequencies. And it's really fun to hang out with those people, and everyone here. Of course, I don't know you, Tanya, but you seem okay.
Thanks.
Tanys, by the way.
It's Tanys, yeah.
Tanys, yeah.
On
Dennis.
that note of resonance, though, I think, I absolutely agree, Adam, with what you've said. And I think it's important to note that resonance sometimes can also have a filter on it, because if we're resonating at the frequency of our own traumas, then we're going to resonate in the story of other people's traumas. And I think that's why a lot of people did believe and feel, because you wonder like how that many people can believe in those stories when my inner compass is clearly saying that's not right. What is it that's making other people believe it? Either they're not checking their inner compass or they're vibrating at that level. And this is where the work comes back to that personal sense of lifting our own vibration. And every day, it's an everyday practice of dropping into the heart. I spend at least a few minutes every single day breathing into my heart starlight, and I expand that through the body. And then when you've done that enough times, you can tell the difference between a true heart resonance and a traumatic resonance. And that's where the work is. I think that's the hard yards of all of this, is to bring ourselves out of that, recognize where our own resonances are, and then from that space with awareness we can shift that and then feel the truth of the resonance of what we're seeking.
Good.
Beautiful.
So that kind of brings us to another question. What methods can we use to connect with ETs? So you mentioned going into that heart space and doing the work.
Well, that's my favorite. I mean, there were two things that really helped me on my journey of awakening. Number one was I met a mentor many years ago who taught me how to activate my Merkaba light body. That was game changer. Didn't do anything for the first year. I just want to give a very honest appraisal to the audience that, it's a daily practice, because for the first year I experienced nothing. And then in the second year, when I really took my practice seriously, is when I started having these interdimensional, almost out of body type experiences, where I started feeling like I'm just one with everything. And there was one moment in particular that really stood out for me, which was when I was sitting down, activating my Merkaba light body, and suddenly it was like my body just dissolved. And in that moment, it was like I didn't know where I ended, where the rest of the universe began. It was like everything was just one. And then I had this voice that said, you're in the 13th dimension. And that's what kind of like kickstarted. So Merkaba light body activation for me, number one. And number two was then I learned how to go into my inner heart space. And that just stacked levels upon my previous practice, because when I went into my inner heart garden and my inner temple, and I dropped into my 9th dimensional Lemurian inner temple, and then when I went in there and I met with the Galactic Federation and I met with all the various star beings, that again was that next level of evolution. But there was a practice in that, and this is why I have to be very honest about it, was there was a lot of distortion when I first went in there, because if I haven't done it my whole life, I mean, I spent months cleaning up my inner heart space, and all this gunky stuff was in there, and I'm violet flaming every day. And then eventually, after it's cleared, now I have a beautiful temple space where I can go into and I can meet with the star beings from a place of clarity, and any being in the universe can meet me in there. So they're probably the two things that I advocate for, and the things that have helped me the most in my journey.
Sheila?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar about the heart space, because for me, that's where it all has to start. And clearing out everything that's keeping me from being able to be my best self, everything keeping me locked into whatever types of trauma dramas are happening around, and learning how to release those, number one, but then building within that heart space, kind of like your own inner Zendra, so that you can vibrate at your highest and they can come in and vibrate at a very similar very similar speed, if you want to call it that, but where the two of you can meet. And as you continue to do this work, then you begin to raise higher and higher and higher in the various dimensions in which you can begin to meet the beings. And so for me, one of the things that they've discussed is the fact that we all talk about these dimensions, but the dimensions themselves are, in a way, these precepts, because we all hold within our own inner space what we think is the 4th dimension, the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension. And the trick is vibrating there, but anchoring that into your being. And
Mm.
so, Alan mentioned Barbara. Barbara and I just released a book, Cosmic Convergence, and we talk a lot about the dimensions, and I talk about, the densities and that difference, so that, really, when we anchor into our own being, the truth of who we are, the truth of the thoughts that we hold, then we can begin to excel. And when I say excel, that just means to me that we begin to move out of our ordinary realities, that we begin to move up higher and higher into these different planes where we can meet, where we can call in, and where we can begin to understand who we are as a spiritual being. And for me, everything goes back to that. Everything goes back to the soul, and really learning where we are and understanding that all of the galactics, they're just having their own experience. It's the same thing. That's the vessel that their soul has chosen to incarnate into at this particular space and time. And you never know which lifetime that you also incarnated as that species. And so, when you begin to look at who we truly are, we are a collection of everything. We are a collection of all the different planets, all the stars. We're a collection of, everything that's ever existed, because we are holding that source energy within us. And therefore, we're all interacting within this plasmatic space, thinking that we're these individuals having this plethora of experiences, when in fact we're operating, within that divine mind.
I totally agree with you, Sheila, that on a soul level, we are the same as all the other beings out there. On a human level, and
Right.
it's something Adam said in some lecture way back about pulsars vibrating as lighthouses around the galaxy. And I think pulsars and stars and suns, they calibrate consciousness at a certain level.
Right.
So when you meet another being from another level of consciousness, there the interface is on a soul level, but the actual connection is like speaking two different languages, or two different levels of vibration. So what I think we need to do is transcend the human ways of thinking. We haven't even gotten beyond 400-year-old physics that's running our world, Newtonian physics that runs everything. That was 1700. That was 400 years. We have not evolved to a new way of thinking about our tech. I mean, it's starting to happen, and what Adam's doing, and a lot of people but we're really locked into a way of thinking, cause and effect, and all that. And we need to shift the way we think about the modality of reality. That's a term I coined.
I like that
Modality
modality of reality.
because we're locked into a very small picture, and the universe is wide open. So I'm curious what you think about, Adam, about this calibration of stars and its relationship to consciousness and the interface with communicating with other beings.
Yeah, sure. I'll start there, and I can speak to that very briefly and then unpack some of this. How do you make contact exploration? Every star is a different set of frequencies. So that set of frequencies, and I mean physically, you look at a star, it's got a different spectrum. Every star has a different spectrum, and the spectrum is actually based on its composition. How much iron does it have, and carbon does it have, and how much hydrogen is burning versus helium at this stage, etc. So we're getting this rainbow that's coming out of every star, and every star's rainbow is a very specific frequency set that influences the development of life on the planets around that star. So there are archetypal connections to certain star systems based on the frequency of the stars. One example that's very easy to talk about is the Pleiades, because in the Pleiades, you have a group of what we perceive as a massive set of very young stars within a nebula that hold to a very blue realm frequency. However, the more I've delved into and gotten to know different species and had memories from the past, I've also become aware that at a certain stage, very advanced species can actually help contain and leverage the frequency of their star, and in fact help to balance that frequency over a very long period of time. And for example, if you look at the frequency of the star Maya, if you actually look at its energetic pulse frequencies, it's one of the most amazing stars in our entire galaxy. It's a perfect sine wave. And not every star is like that. Most stars are this whole very complex thing, but the signals from Maya in the Pleiadian star system are so regular and perfect, it seems as though it could have been engineered that way. And in my assessments, I believe that Maya, being the home star of the water planet that I incarnated on as a Pleiadian, and many of my friends, that they did learn to engineer the star, and they've kept some of that star group looking very young, even though they're much older than they actually are, which is just a wild concept, especially as a physicist and an astrophysicist. Now, in terms of making contact and exploring contact experiences, one of the places I like to start is looking at how important it is to get grounded. I used to say, if you want to connect with the stars, build a medicine wheel on the earth. And it was doing a lot of work with Indigenous elders and youth, doing these prayer runs for world peace and getting deeply grounded in my body and in my connection to the earth. That was the first key piece of my contact experiences and opening that up for me. Now, the Merkaba work that Eesha was talking about, I've had experiences around that since I was a teenager, but the morning that I actually met the Galactic Council, as I was running across the desert, my Merkaba was spinning up and it vibrated up until it was a piercingly high frequency, and I could feel this entire field spreading out around me. And then suddenly I was sustained in that field, projected out of my body, and ended up in this giant galactic council chamber with 73 different ambassadors of different species from across the galaxy, which changed my life, obviously, in profound ways. And you can learn about that story on Gaia. I did this big, long interview with Ruben Langdon and his show Interviews with Ed, if you want to hear that whole story. But the vehicle of our energy bodies, learning how to manage that vehicle, has everything to do with our capacity to astral travel, to bilocate, to be able to more easily express communication at a telepathic level. It's a very kind of critical part of this journey. And there are a lot of challenges and roadblocks that you might run into along the way. And I will say that, you know, even as someone who woke up at 15 and now being 42 years old, I still enter cycles of new transformation and new karmic stuff I'm working with and new things I have to alchemize. It's not like you just kind of skip into the infinite eternal aspect of yourself and then you're in avatar mode from then on. I'm a lot better at entering avatar mode when I want to, whenever I want to. You get really good at that. But you're still going to be needing to work with the human aspects of what it means to be on this planet, to be in a collective that's going through a lot of trauma and pain, and stay in relationship to people and to the dynamics of change that are occurring. So all of that is actually important for our contact experiences to stabilize, because we need to have our hearts that open to loving where we're at as a people, loving the human aspect of us, and expanding ourselves and opening ourselves through deeper energetic work to actually, you know, the potential that we have as these incredible super beings that have so much magic inside of us that very few of us have woken up. Oh, we can't hear you, Tanys.
You're on mute.
Sorry.
There she is.
So, how do you think our culture, religions, and social norms would shift if ETs officially showed up? What parts of our identity should we try to keep?
What I hope doesn't happen is they just turn them into another religious god. So that's
Don't
my
want it.
piece of that.
You know,
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons the government has. I just saw Lou Elizondo give a talk in Philadelphia, and he said, "Well, we don't want to disrupt people's religions, but you know what? It's time to
Mhm.
disrupt their religion because every war that's been on this planet is over belief systems, you know, and they're just belief is make believe. Someone told you to believe that. It's not knowing. Knowing is where we're going for experience, not. I mean, if people want to be religious, that's their choice, of course, and that's totally. But I, I think John Lennon said it all in Imagine, you know, imagine no religion, all the people living for today. I know that's idealistic, but it will disrupt people's belief systems, and that's a good thing. We are in for a rude awakening, maybe not people at this call, but for most of humanity, and it's coming. It's something is coming. You can feel the atmosphere, you can feel it in a sort of tension, but a sort of an elation in a sense. If you tune into that, there's a shift that is going on, and yeah, culturally, it's like a turning point in the cultural understandings of what we've uh, been, where we've been, and where we're going. The post-disclosure age is totally different than the pre-disclosure age. This is a way people have framed it, and it's exciting. Like you know, we said before, we've already done all that human stuff. Bashar, who I like some of it, it doesn't get any denser than this, folks. You know, get the density while you can because we're leaving this level, hopefully. And so the new adventures that's possible when we transcend our old beliefs, whatever those beliefs are unimaginable because we're only imagining the known. Where we're going is in the unknown. The unknown has yet to be mapped, and anything we think that is a projection of what we already know. So the idea is to be as open-hearted, open-minded, open to new possibilities that will take us into the future we have yet to imagine. And it's only better than what we have imagined about the awful things that humanity has done in the past. I'll just end in this quote. H.G. Wells, who wrote the first book about, you know, the War of the Worlds, but then had an evolution and an awakening, said in 1938, around then, someday people will look back at old newspapers or magazines and think, was there ever such a world?
Mhm.
And that's where we're in a moment of transition and awakening, and I think we can all really get excited about that. At least I am.
I love all of that. I really do. And that's exactly where I'm coming from. So I hate to even bring this up. But you know, there also stands the possibility that those people who are in power are going to fight this and they're going to demonize the extraterrestrials coming in, and they're going to use religion as a way to bastardize the experience that everyone is having. And so, you know, as those thoughts started coming up, I'm like, I'm not putting energy into that. I'm not putting energy
No, it's a
into that. And
reality.
I'm wanting to create this totally different reality because I think that's possible. You know, I think that collectively we can all create the experience that we want. And in reality, that's what we're already doing. But I did want to bring that forward because you know, a lot of people have brought that up to me actually when I'm saying, oh, and this is going to be great. And they're like, yeah, but you know what? I think my preacher is going to go counter to that. And that really got me thinking. So if individuals are already talking on small scales, what could possibly happen within their church, within their conferences, you know that the larger powers that be are already starting to look at a plan. So I think that it really begs the opportunity for us to be able to stand in our truth, and the opportunity for us to step forward and say, no, this is not the way it is, because I see this as a beautiful chance for us to finally break free of a lot of these bondages that have really been, superimposed on us.
I think,
Thank
I
you for that.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Go-
absolutely agree. And I think, we've seen historically the demonization of unknown cultures. I mean, we've seen it with the indigenous peoples when you go traveling around and you meet a new country and somebody's suddenly black instead of white. We have treated them as other and we have demonized them. And I can only hope that as a human race, we learn from the mistakes of the past and recognize that there's probably a lot more similarities between us and the off-world beings, the same way that Australians have a lot in common with Russians and Chinese and indigenous First Nations people. So I do see that there might be some groups that will attempt this demonization process. I just hope that we can look to our history and go, well, we've done that. How did that work out for us? It ended in wars and nobody wants that. So maybe this time, we can try things a different way.
Beautiful.
Yeah, well said. I think that in general, I'm going to just go on the sovereignty point here because it'll also address some of the questions that are coming up on YouTube and in the chat around how do we protect ourselves. Look, there are beings out there who have a lot of trauma on all kinds of levels, whether that's, within a large scale system that they've been behind developing, or are, individual spirits, beings. I think a lot of people's dark extraterrestrial experiences aren't even coming from beings on other planets. They're just spirits on this planet who like to play games and mess with people. If you've ever been to Bali, there's a lot of really intense and very powerful spirits there. I had friends that had to go through a curse clearing over several years after doing a ceremony in a place they shouldn't have been doing it. And in a way they shouldn't have been doing it. And really horrible things were happening. So we need to have one really deep respect for the sacred and for places and for magic and for consciousness. And two, we need to understand that we are always as powerful as we choose to be. If we allow that we are fully sovereign individuals and we see that we are within a circle and we set the field of what that circle is and what it allows and what it doesn't, it's called warding and casting a circle. And I train about this in the Guardian Alliance, but you can program your circle to allow in certain kinds of experiences and to essentially keep other kinds of experiences out of that circle. And it's very, very effective. And you also have to get to know what kind of unconscious drives you may still be operating from, aspects of your psyche that might be addicted to certain kinds of drama or conflicts that you're not even fully aware of yet. So as you clean up the space around your inner heart center, as Eesha put it, you get better at setting a circle that actually calls in the kinds of experiences that you want and keeps others from it. Now, when I've had experiences where clearly an entity's coming in to mess with me, I think it's a joke. To me, it's like I'm an angel and they're this being who's traumatized and they've got all their stuff they're hanging on to and they're coming trying to project scary stuff at me. And I'm like, oh, you poor thing. You're like so caught up in that story from your old wound. And then they're like shocked. They don't know what to do. And I'll often use mirroring as well. There's an ancient magical technique called the divine trine, where you surround a being in a divine triangle form that reflects to them their self, other, and higher perspective. And all of a sudden, they're caught in a space where it's like, if you've ever gone on stage or something and you suddenly became really self-conscious, and you don't know what to do because you're like so self-conscious. Isn't that an interesting phrase? Isn't that an interesting term? Well, we can help beings that are going through deep struggle become self-conscious. And we do have to establish our self-awareness and self-consciousness of our sovereignty in order to deal with these kinds of things. And for myself, doing that has helped me navigate major disinformation campaigns that have been being rolled out on this planet quite significantly, especially over the last, 8 years or so. And you can see how much these disinformation campaigns have driven people to fight against each other, to reject each other. They've divided all of these conscious communities, alternative awareness communities. And, the next thing you know, with some very, very dense psychological programming, you end up with people who think the earth is flat and are willing to aggressively fight you to defend that belief. Even if you tell them you've got friends that have visited Antarctica, even if you point out that the driving time in Australia is the same as in North America and the United States between two places, even if you show them all of the science, the sense of disconnection is really, it's fed. It's you can see when people are being fed a story that then makes them feel special for knowing it and makes them fight to protect the ego that they've now latched around that false story.
You're talking
And-
about religion then. That is religion.
And that is religion. And that's exactly my point, Alan, is that that's exactly the driver that was used to slaughter women across Europe, millions of women, for being herbalists, for being naturopaths, for understanding how to heal. But the problem was they were part of tribes that were not part of the Roman Empire or were not part of, the Christian empires that rolled in later. And you can see that in North America, with the movement of, the white men and the different groups that traveled across to take indigenous lands. You can see it going back in all these different points in history, even in ancient Egypt, where during the time of Akhenaten, the military of General Horemheb was using Akhenaten and then Tutankhamun as an excuse to go slaughter the Nubians and take their gold. It's like this game has happened over and over again. So we have to be watchful and take the sovereignty over our own conscious process to recognize, are we being pushed to divide and to hate each other and to fight each other through this new insight that you're getting? And if so, maybe we should question that narrative. Because if we actually want peace and healing on the planet, we're going to need to start really deeply accepting each other's beliefs, accepting each other's backgrounds, accepting each other's journeys, and accepting all of the amazing work that's already been done before us. Like, for example, the 500 years of science that's proved the earth is round, or the millions of books in all the libraries that prove that the Tartaria thing, advanced civilization in the 1850s, is not true. Because otherwise, we're believing that everyone's lying to us. And when that happens, you start isolating yourself. And when you start isolating yourself and believing that everyone is against you, that's when you're the most controllable. And that's exactly what happened with, Hitler in the time of Germany, is he isolated and divided and created a condition where everybody suddenly was on board with slaughtering an entire, group of people. So we have to be very careful about this stuff.
No, I agree. We have to question even our own belief systems. What have we been force fed? What is real? What is not real? And I think it goes back to trusting experience. My experience, I don't know maybe how to interpret that experience, but experiencers in general, that's their truth, not based on belief. It's based on a gnosis. They know. We might not know how to define it, but let's bring ourselves back to the phenomenological approach to being, where we're not basing it on what someone else has said. And maybe that's a way of the future. Maybe we can clear the banks in an idealistic way and just look at each other for who they are in the moment of their open-hearted beingness in that moment. Anyway, that's
I think
a pod.
that's the most grounding piece that you've just said there, Alan, because we are in the age of information, right? And we can get completely overwhelmed. You can go on the internet, you can find information about everything. The information contradicts with other information. So it's really hard sometimes to wrap your head around it all. And I think what you've said is just that bringing it home piece of, well, what's your experience? Like, I know when I go into a plane and I travel to another country, I see the roundedness of the earth. I mean, it's just obvious, you know. So there are some things to me that I can say from experience are very true for me. I know that in my experience there are galactic beings who have our best interests at heart. That's been my experience of that, and I think that is where we are going to find the truth, is really to seek within ourselves and to come back to that present moment. What am I experiencing right now? How do I experience the world?
Yeah.
And in that experience, is there an evolution? Can I experience more love, more kindness? What will that do? How will that unfold as I sit in the experience of that? So, I mean, I'm a big advocate for meditation, you know, really sitting and just being in the presence of yourself, whatever methodology you want to use, whether it's Buddhist or Vipassana or whatever style, but just taking a few moments to sit in that, because that's how you notice the experience that you're actually having.
Yeah, thank you.
And we have another one here. What are your thoughts about bifurcation and the splitting of parallel Earths?
I have a very strong opinion on this one.
Me
that I will
too.
happily share.
You go first. You go first.
Well, I just think, and I'm open to discussion on this, but I just think that the concept of splitting doesn't align with the higher vibrational unified field. Like, I feel like the two concepts are contradictory. If we talk about 5D as a unified field consciousness, where in that are you going to find a polarized splitting? So I've seen the rhetoric out there with, you know, people saying there's going to be a 3D Earth and a 5D Earth, and people are going to have to make a choice. And I simply don't see that, because as long as we're perceiving a split, we're not in 5D. The 5D cannot exist. The unified cannot exist. So I think that whole rhetoric is just redundant, in my opinion.
100%. I fully agree. And in fact, it's so ridiculous to me that people would use that as and be like, well, you're either 5D or 3D, and if you're 3D you're going to hell, and if you're 5D you're going to heaven. I mean, it's a very old story, right? And the reality is that, you know, that judgment is the main problem, actually. And also from a physics standpoint, you don't get 5-dimensional anything without the full inclusion of the 3D inside of it. Every dimension adds on dimensions. So, you know, that's a ludicrous concept that you're going to enter the 5D and leave the 3D. That's just not even there's nothing about that that's even real at all. And then, you know, in terms of timelines and bifurcation of world view experiences, I actually have a very firm belief at this stage, after lots and lots of trial and error and experimentation and memory, that we are in a consistent timeline with each other. All of us are, that the flow of experience is consistent. And what that means is that the experiences that I had back when I was arriving on this planet, the experiences I had in ancient Egypt, the experiences I had in Japan, you know, a long time ago in another life, all of those experiences have led me to who I am now. There's never been a split away from the journey that I am. And the causal relationships that I've had along the way, meaning the people that I've met, the people I have connections to, I still have those connections. I still have those relationships. So I'm not isolated to my own dream entirely that's completely separate from everybody else's dream and only experiencing my own isolated reality. I'm experiencing a reality in flow and in conjunction with lots of other infinite eternal beings who all have their own individuation and their own individual experience. And so I don't actually look at it like there's infinite physical timelines that all can branch and exist in multiple planes and you can jump timelines. I think that's ludicrous. I think that what's actually going on is that on an astral level, in the higher planes of existence, from the astral up, which is the mental plane up, you can imagine infinite variations. Now, that doesn't mean that those infinite variations are going to collapse and become the reality you're experiencing, but you have the power of choosing which ones do come into your experience now and going into the future. You are crafting your journey of reality in this exact present moment and shaping the potential reality as you go forward. But that doesn't break anything. There's total consistency with that, with everything in your past. And back to what we were saying earlier, you know, imagining that something different happened in your past in order to experience a different emotion around it, that's valuable. But don't mistake that with the idea that the past actually changed, because then you're in bypassing and you're ignoring the truth of what you actually experienced. Because if you didn't experience that, you'd never be in the healing experience in the first place to look back at that moment. So hello, that timeline has to stay consistent in order to avoid that paradox. And there's so much beauty in accepting the journey that what we've been on and what we've experienced is actually what we've experienced. There's a huge amount of faith and solidity and logical consistency to that just makes reality more fun to play with, I think.
Well, you know, I agree with that, but I also see it also as a symbolic thing. I think there is a bifurcation. There's this whole conversation today, what Sheila talks about all the time, and and you, Adam. There's a whole population that has no idea what we're talking about. They can't relate. Walk-ins, astral planes, Andromeda, you know, Pleiades. I mean, I just was hanging out with those people, and for a moment I forgot they existed because I only talk to the people I can talk to. But oh yeah, there's this whole population that doesn't know anything about any of this, and it's like we're in our own little world, and so we have bifurcated. And yes, there's a real world out there, and we, not that we're better, but we have I can talk to those other people about baseball and what kind of shoes they're wearing and all that, but they can't, it's not to make us better, but they can't talk about what we're talking about. They're just not there, and they don't want to be, and that's fine, you know. After I wrote this book on UFOs and contact, my mother says to me, "You don't really believe that sort of stuff, do you?" And I said, not only do I believe it, I wrote a book about it, but you know,
Alan.
so the
Oh, man.
bifurcation has happened, is happening, and maybe we can meet somewhere, but so it's a kind of,
But let me ask you a question about that, Alan, because I'm really curious on your perspective on this. I think it's juicy for the audience.
yeah.
So do you think that some of those people, if they had the choice of going back to their corporate job or working at McDonald's or whatever that is, you know, if they had a choice between doing that or getting on a starship and becoming part of Starfleet, which do you think they would choose?
Well, if they get over their fear of the unknown, because people in that level are trapped by their fears. They watch the nightly news and they get stuck. And I'm not getting on any starship, you know, it's like, and us, yeah, where do we go? But so it's a mindset. It's a mindset of limitation in a sense. And and we've all been there, we've had lifetimes there, whatever. And something new is happening for people who, yeah, let's go on the starship, and other people say, nope, I like it right here, and that's okay. These are evolutions of consciousness, and you know, we've become aware of a lot of those limitations that don't take us into adventure. I mean, Sheila has the most amazing story of bifurcation, where it's like, boom, Sheila, you just left that past behind. Her walk-in experience, it's probably the most intense I've ever heard. And don't you think that was a sort of bifurcation for you of one reality into another one, Sheila?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I would have never believed something like that was even possible, you know, much less experience it and then become instantly, clairvoyant and clairaudient and have all of this information running around in my head and have all these past lives flooding me, which I didn't even believe in. And, as we've moved along, one of the things that my collective has always shown me is, when they were talking about, moving into these higher planes of consciousness, moving into the new earth. I thought initially that new earth was like this, and it was splitting apart because that's kind of what they were showing me. But until I really started diving deep into that, I did not realize that that splitting apart was that splitting apart of that egoic self, that releasing and letting go and allowing the true energy of the soul to come in, to allow for, the experience, the excitement of all of it without judgment, releasing all of the expectations, releasing all of the, addictions to outcomes and those kinds of things, and beginning to show not just me, but other people how, like, even with this election, people are always asking, what do you see with the election? What do you see? And it's like, I don't even look at the election. Number one, because I'm not even wasting my time, thinking about that, because I'm too busy over here creating something else. This is where I want to go. And that was that separation that they talked about, learning to, release and let go of the fundamental beliefs that have been shoved down our throats, and saying, you know what, that has nothing to do with me. And I think that that's what all of us are doing. And in a way, that does create the expansion of a timeline, because then it allows for more to begin to come in.
Right. So we're living in the parallel earth right now. If you have a foot in both worlds, and
Right.
you need to, because you have to pay your rent and do that. But there's also this other dialogue of this other earth, this other cosmos, this other state of being that maybe it will catch on in a bigger way. It already has to some degree, and maybe we'll all get on that starship, Adam. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I've asked a lot of people that question, Alan, that would never, ever watch this panel or think any of this would be interesting or real. The people that are the most anti-woo, you could say, imaginable, that, laugh at a lot of this community because they're very earthy, grounded people. And when you really get down to the logic of it, the reality is that, yeah, if there was a starship they could get on and fly to another planet, yeah, that's more interesting than Netflix tonight. Of course I'm going to do that. Like, it's a duh for them. It's just that they don't see the potential reality of that occurring. And I think that that's part of the importance as we're closing this, this time together, to land for the people that have been watching this whole journey about an ET embassy. It's the anchoring of the reality that we are in a time of contact with extraterrestrial family that's been going on for a very long time, by the way, but we are formalizing the need to actually establish an embassy that has its own sovereign space within the boundaries of a country, to provide a space where extraterrestrial contact and direct relationships can happen and be cultivated without the massive bureaucracy of any nation state getting involved. That there's a free and open space for humanity and the people as a whole to open up to Star Family and exchange with them. And that is a critical part of this bridging process. And yeah, I think it's hilarious because of how much disclosure has actually already happened, how many people now really just kind of take it for granted. Like, yeah, duh, we're not alone. Of course we're not alone. But what does that mean for my life? Well, I'd just like to, impart to people that, well, in the very near future, one of the things it means is that you'll go out to get in your car and you can go spend a sunrise in the Pleiades, go have lunch in the middle of the night in the Syrian system in a tree city than head to Japan and pick up some sushi on your way home, and get back home, before sunset and, have a day across worlds. Like, this is the future that's coming. And we need to start looking at how beautiful and exquisite that is and how worth it is to work out our issues, our differences, and to find that peace with each other as a planet, because we're in this amazing growth phase into a new civilization.
Well, one thing I
said.
just want to add to that, Adam, is the people who would get on that starship are the ones that are trying to escape. And what's so important about the earlier conversations we had is that we're not escaping. We've grounded. We've experienced that. We've gone through it. So we're not escaping. We're here for another adventure, not to leave the old incomplete modes behind. So it's about owning the human experience in all its dark, light, heavy, insane parts. And yes, there's a starship waiting. It's like that.
I'll get on board. I'll see you there. I'll be waiting.
Yeah.
Bags packed, ready to go.
That's right.
You do.
I'm ready.
There's the captain right there. He's going to take out his starship.
Make it
Coming
so.
soon. If I can help it, that's coming soon.
Okay.
Awesome.
So final words from each of you, please. Adam?
Yeah, I just want to thank all of you for spending the time to listen to this content today and to be a part of this event and this experience. I sincerely hope that you support the project with the embassy and reach out to friends, reach out to family, introduce them to concepts. One of my earliest journeys was being invited as a speaker at the White House in the United Nations by a guy who knew I'd had these extraterrestrial experiences and wanted me to go in and ask questions to get some of these young philanthropists and leaders from around the world thinking about some of these harder questions and to see where they were at. And I learned a lot from that. And I invite people to do that with their community, because the worst thing that can happen is that they blow you off and they don't want to talk about that topic. But if you can open it up and ask curiously, what do you actually think about crop circles? What do you actually think about this disclosure thing where the Pentagon said that they recovered off-world vehicles? What do you think that means? Starting those conversations, I think, is really great and important for our communities and will help expand this knowledge and this awareness to more people. So thank you all so much for coming. I'm Adam Apollo, adamapollo.com. You can find me there. And my book that's just being published, but you can get in on the online subscription too for the full media rich and audiobook versions at thedragonkey.com. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And Sheila, please.
I think events like this are so needed. So I really want to commend you first and foremost for taking the time, and for everyone for watching this, because the information that you have heard today that you're digesting, it becomes part of you. You always tell people there's a difference from knowing the path, there's a difference from walking the path, and there's a difference from becoming the path. And I think everyone today has this opportunity to become the path, to become the voice, to let people know in a very open-hearted and grounded way. And the one thing that I do want to encourage people to do is to ground every single day. So as all of these changes are taking place, we can be the ones that can stand solid. We can be the ones that can help people through these times when they have questions. And so, like Adam said, share all this information, with your friends, talk openly about it, and really go deep within to see how you feel about everything that you've heard today, and come up with your own, ideas. How are you going to move forward, and what contributions are you going to make? And, you can find me on my website, SheilaSeppi.com, and I will brag about my book that we've just released. The official release date is 11/22, but Amazon has already done an early release, and so cosmic convergence. And we talk about a lot of the things that we've spoken about today. So if you have an opportunity, check that out and let us know what you think. And again, thank you guys so much for inviting me and for the phenomenal work that you're doing.
Thank you. And Alan, please.
Well, I think everything everyone said on this whole forum, on this panel throughout the day, is a key piece of information that will be used to navigate a future that we need. And it's sort of like a curriculum, and all the things that me and Adam and Sheila and Eesha do, we're laying out a foundation for people who will be interested. I mean, I just met a bunch of people in that other world, that parallel world, said, "Really, tell me about UFOs." And I did. And they were actually open, and we, I think we won't really need the embassy until we learn to be terrestrials, until we learn to be human. That's part of it. In this book, I have a quote Bruce Lipton in the epilogue, and he says, "We are not humans until we create humanity." That's when we all come together and form the synergy of awareness where we're all resonant and coherent with each other, doing our best gifts and joys to serve the greater good and ourselves. It's that combination. So that's when we become human, when we realize we're part of the bigger picture, and when we realize that we're humanity and speak with one voice in unison as a greater super organism. That's when, according to Bruce Lipton, we meet the other beings, the other ones. So when we speak as one, the oneness that is already out there waiting for us to grow up comes together, and we form the next synergy of awareness. We make the next level of superorganism from our oneness, a little planet, to these other beings of their onenesses, and then the greater collective cosmic mind develops to its next level. So each of us play a big part in contributing, and I'm happy to have found such beautiful, like-minded people to share this excitement, knowledge, and possibility. I mean, I just love what each person here, Adam, Sheila, Eesha, are doing in their own way to generate this energy that is actually bringing us into the future. It really is paving the way. It's like you put your foot down and the stone is there, and it's there, and it's there, and it's like maybe you don't know where that's all going, but I think it's going to a place where we are going to have that open contact, and the embassy, in a sense, will be inside each one of us. Not to take away anything you guys are doing, but the embassy is our own being connected to the wholeness of humanity. So that just came to me. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eesha.
Yeah, it's been beautiful rounding out this event from the start when I first kickstarted with Neil yesterday and now through to today, and just watching how this whole event has unfolded during that time. And when we kickstarted yesterday, and any time we do events like this, I always feel the excitement of our staff family. They get it. It's like they get all these little giggles, like these starry giggles that come in, and they get very happy that we're having these conversations and that we're choosing to spend our time being here in the presence of each other and lifting our vibration. And yeah, I'm just really grateful and thankful to everyone who's shown up, because you could be doing anything today. You could be out at the beach, you could be doing God knows what, and yet all these at least couple of hundred people that have tuned in have chosen to be here and prioritize this conversation that is so needed and so valuable right now. So I just have a lot of deep gratitude to all the speakers, and Tanys, who's done an amazing job of hosting and also behind the scenes with Angelique and Jacob and Sylvain and all the people that have put this event together. And one thing I just want to share is I have upcoming, we've just released the page for this today. We have an experience. It's a 5-day challenge on how to build your life and business for those of you that have businesses in 5D consciousness. And it's going to be a very practical kind of process of how to do things like the Merkaba meditation, how to connect with your higher self, how to make contact. Because I believe contact is for everyone. You know, my podcast, First Contact, our entire philosophy is contact is for everyone. You don't need to wait for the government. You go out into your backyard, you implement the tools and practices that you have, you do your daily meditation practice, and you can connect with your star family. So if you want to get on board this 5-day experience, the website is journey.eeshapatel.com. I'll just paste it in the chat box, and come and join us. And of course, I'd like to finish off with just the gratitude that I have for the Alliance and the amazing work that they're doing with the embassy to actually ground and build this physical space where we can all meet. Because when the ETs, and when the ETs come, when the beings come, we have a welcoming place for them. So get on board. I know they've posted the link for the Alliance. It's allianceforet.org. You can go there and you can become a member and support this bigger vision and mission that we're all part of as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for all of your time, all of your efforts. And we bring this evening to a close. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha.
No one wants to leave.
Sheila, I'm going to call you, okay?
Okay.
Not now, but this week.
Yeah. Okay, we'll talk. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.